in the exact field which we are talking. That was in the field of disaster resilience and how to mitigate the effect of COVID in rural areas, which he ran a project, and we were very happy with the findings of his project, which have been published on our website. I am sure that all the small municipalities, because he has worked, if I'm not incorrect, if I remember correctly, in the area around Khandala and
Khopoli.
Khopoli, sorry,
Khopoli,
Khopoli.
yeah.
So that will be very useful. This study will be very useful for all the small municipalities in Maharashtra and as well as all over the country. Now, what I will be talking will be a very small topic, because the topic is very large. Sustainability, development, mitigation of or resilience in the during the time of disaster. I will be mainly talking briefly about the mitigation of or resilience during the natural disasters. Before that, formally, I must thank you for inviting me for this valedictory session. Director of UGC, Professor Kogne, or all other professors and teachers who are attending this program. I'm really very happy and privileged to amongst you. My perspective is from the perspective of an administrator. You have been hearing mostly from the sort of experts in these fields. The administrator's job is to implement the policies and the guidelines which are given by the experts. What are the problems they are faced? How they get over these problems? This will be, in short, I'll be covering. Now, resilience becomes very important at the time of disasters. These disasters may be natural, it may be man-made. The biggest man-made disaster which our country has faced is probably Bhopal gas tragedy. Probably the even now, some of the families, some of the persons who were affected by tragedy are still not fully satisfied with whatever has been done for them. Natural disaster is now we are facing this COVID, which we are facing for almost now 2 years. Though there is some talk that this may not really be a natural disaster. It may be a man-made disaster, because there is evidence to suggest that gain of function research, which you must be aware, is a research where the pathogens are sort of made more virulent, so that studies can be made how to control them if pandemic of such virulency attacks the humankind. So these sort of gain of function research is banned in US, but unfortunately it seems that the US funds were being given to Wuhan laboratory in China, where such research was going on. And there is a chance, because there is some evidence that either some coronavirus was made more virulent, and probably it leaked. Though, of course, there is no finding on that. This just by the way, that this disaster apparently is man-made, may not be man-made. It is today we are treating it as a natural disaster, but it may be man-made also. Now, how to make face a disaster, and how to communities to be made resilient. Now, community may be a very small community, like a slum in a city or a village. Community may be a district, it may be a state, it may be the whole country. The disaster today we are facing at the national level or even at the international level. Now, how to make ourselves resilient in the face of a disaster of this magnitude? What are the sort of elements which will make a society, a community to face such disasters? Now, one of the important things is that there should be some sort of community of interest. I mean, here I am using the word community in a different sense, or the convergence of interest, convergence of viewpoint, if we have to face such a disaster. Now, unless there is some sort of consensus that these are the things which we have to do as a society to face this disaster, it will be very difficult to face such disaster and be resilient in the face of such disasters. Uh, in such a situation, role of civil society, role of media becomes very, very important to generate or create a sort of consensus that this is how our society should face these challenges. In India, if we see that though there is a sort of view from the government sources, especially, that we have been largely or mainly successful in sort of mitigating the effect of this disaster, there is other point of view also where we say that the government has failed. This, of course, is premature, because only after the disaster is finally over, it will be possible to give a judgment whether it was faced in a right manner, whether whatever could be possible was done or not. So we should not really get into that. But here I would like to highlight some of the problems which the society as a whole faced while sort of facing these disasters. Especially, I like to highlight the role of two institutions, one of which I'll go in detail, another institution I'll talk passingly. Now, what is the role of courts in this situation? Now, I'll give you just a few examples. Now, every day, one or the other High Court is calling the government. Now, Bombay High Court every day, I'm sure that from March 2020, every day there is some hearing other about the pandemic in Bombay High Court. So the persons who are responsible for mitigation of this problem have to divert half their attention to go to the court. Now, what the courts are saying? The Kerala High Court, a single judge bench, gives an order that what the government has decided, that Covishield should be given in 2 doses and there should be a gap of 84 days. The judge of High Court says, no. If a person wants and he is ready to pay, kindly use the, see the word pay, he can be allowed to jump the queue, and after 28 days, second dose couldn't be given to them. Of course, that decision has been cancelled by division bench. Division bench means 2 judges yesterday only. But the fact remains that here are our courts who are overriding the recommendations which are given by the experts in the field. Experts may be wrong, but ultimately we have to go by the experts' advice. And if government doesn't go by the experts' advice, how will government function? I really don't know. Then we have the case of during the second wave. There was a great shortage of, or I would not say shortage, because the oxygen was available as per the normal requirement. But because nobody realized that the second wave will be so severe and the requirement of oxygen will jump 10, 15, 20 times, there was a shortage of oxygen. No, nothing wrong in that. Whether government was successful or not is a different issue. But what did our court do? Every High Court started so-called PII. But Delhi High Court says that all oxygen should come to Delhi. Now, what will happen to the other states? They are not bothered, because Delhi High Court is there only for Delhi. Bombay High Court says, no, all the oxygen should come to Maharashtra. Now, is this the way sort of court should function? Rather than taking a view that the oxygen should be equitably distributed all among all the states of the country, these are our high courts who are pressurizing, threatening the governments that no, only Mumbai should get the oxygen, only Delhi should get the oxygen, and all those who are living in rural areas be condemned. Anyway, this is my view. You may not agree with that. So I would say that the role of courts in the tackling of this pandemic has really is open to a lot of questions, and they have not allowed the administration or the bureaucracies to function because whenever there is a disaster, if the courts start interfering at every stage, obviously the effectiveness of the bureaucracy or the administration will go down. Coming to the role of media. Now here again, we are now facing a big epidemic, or whether it is pandemic, because probably it is affecting all the countries, of what is known as fake news. Some of us feel that this pandemic of fake news is a recent phenomenon after the advent of social media. It is not so. In fact, the fake news is as old as the media itself. I'll give you just one example. I'm sure many of you will be professors in psychology, because there was some mention that psychiatrists were also called during this program. Many of you might have studied psychology also. There is a famous theory called bystander effect. There is always a sort of, two views about the basic nature of humanity. Some people say that human beings actually believe in cooperation. If somebody is in difficulty, other persons come to their help. There is another view also, which says basically human beings are totally selfish. And this bystander effect is that if somebody is being beaten up on a busy street, there will be a lot of bystanders who will be just seeing it and not trying to save that person. This is a bystander effect. I mean, in the rough language of a person who is not a academician. So this bystander effect, where did it start? In fact, in 1964, I mean, almost 50 years back, and this incident happened in New York City. I'm telling you this to show that this fake news is not a news phenomenon. It is almost 50, 60 years old. A young lady, I have her name also, but she was called Kitty. I mean, Catherine. She was coming back to her home in New York City. She parked her car and started walking to her apartment. She was attacked by a person and she was killed. After 2-3 days, a news item appeared in New York Times, which is supposed to be a very independent, whatever adjectives you want to use for that paper, saying that 38 persons saw that this girl was, or a young lady was being assaulted by a murderer. She was attacked 3 times, but nobody did anything. Now, I don't want to get into details. Those of you who have studied psychology probably would be aware about this, because I am told that it's part of the textbook. 100 research papers were written about this incident. So they said that if somebody has intervened at that time, she probably could have been saved. After this was taken up, newspapers, TV, because during 64, TV was very prevalent in US, not so in India. And later on, when people started going into detail, somebody asked me, where is this figure of 38 came? Then they realized that there was no 38 neighbors, because it was a very cold night, April. April in New York is very, very cold. It was after 3 o'clock in the morning, after 12 midnight. Most of the persons were asleep. There were no 38 lights in the windows of neighbors. 38 figures came because police has interrogated or interviewed 38 persons. So that was one total misreporting by the New York Times. Second thing was that she was assaulted thrice. That person came, attacked her, she fell down, then she got up and again started going towards her apartment. Again that person came, attacked her, then went away, and third time also he came. Later on it transpired that that person attacked her only twice. I mean, it doesn't matter, because that is really not the main argument. But the thing is that where did the New York Times got this figure that she was attacked thrice? Though in actual this thing she was attacked only twice. Then they said that police was never informed and nobody came to support her. In fact, later on, it transpired that one lady actually went to her. She actually lost her sort of breath or last in the lap of that lady. And that lady has actually taken her to the hospital. So it's not that nobody came to sort of help her. Point is, then even after 2-3 days after this, the news item had come in the New York Times, a photographer